Welcome to News West 9's West Texas View with Johnny Lou Avery.
Welcome to the West Texas View. I'm Johnny Lou Avery, and it is such a privilege to have back with us Dr. Bobby Jane. He was here a couple of months ago, and we did a series of programs, and I just was inundated with comments and questions from our viewers, and said to have him come back and answer more questions. And so for the next 2 or 3 Sundays, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about some of the questions that were called in, or I got an email about, as well as talking about some of the things that he's working on directly. He's just written an article about bed sharing with children and parents and the pros and cons of that. We're going to be talking about depression after miscarriage and several really timely information that I think many of you can use. And I want to encourage you to continue to write me questions that you have, because we're going to infringe upon Dr. Jane's good nature and ask him to come back as often as his time will permit. And Bobby, it is such a pleasure to have you with us and to talk more about some of the things that we need to know about mental health. And mental health has kind of got a short shrift up until the last 10 or so years, and we've really been paying more attention and understand that mental health is as important as our physical health. And so that's why it's been such a joy for me to have you here to help enlighten our viewers and myself about all of these. So I want to start out by kind of outlining some of the things we're going to talk about. And I had a lot of questions about Alzheimer's. I had a lot more questions about children and depression, some more questions about adults and depression. But we want to start out this morning by talking about one of the things that came up, and that was talk to us more about bed sharing and the pros and cons, and particularly at what age should that happen?
Yeah. First of all, Johnny, thank you so much for inviting me back. It's such a pleasure to come back and talk to your audience. I love this conversation, and it gives me an opportunity to talk directly to the community, where it's so important that we don't stay in our ivory towers in our clinics. That's and right. Interact with people.
Or in med school.
Or in med school and teaching. Yeah, it's such a privilege and a pleasure to come and talk to you. Thank you for inviting me again. I think this is a very, very important topic. Being a child psychiatrist, I get to ask by young mothers and even mothers of all ages that they're concerned that if the children or the grandchildren have been wanting to sleep in the same bed as the parents are. So is it okay to have the child sleep in the same bed as the parents are? They're particularly concerned about what the impact it will have for the child's development. They're concerned that the child will be over dependent on the parents, will not be able to separate from the parents and be able to live independently. Well, there's a new study that has come out recently that has found, and again, as I said, we had a paper written on that, which is going to be published in a nursing journal later this year. Extensively, this bed sharing is a cultural phenomenon. Across the globe, there are certain cultures, like my own culture, original culture, South Asian culture, and even Oriental cultures. They actually encourage bed sharing of children of all ages until a child is able to voluntarily or willingly want to sleep separately. Most studies, even a longitudinal study, that means they have followed children bed sharing into from very young age to they become adolescent and adult, and they found that there is absolutely no difference in their development or formation of independent behavior if they had bed sharing compared to those kids who were weaned away from bed sharing very early in life. So let me repeat what I said. So it does not result in any impairment in development of independence. It does not cause any hindrance in any achievement of milestones of children. In fact, it encourages bonding with the parent, and it creates more sense of belongingness, more sense of family unity in children. Now, for very young infants, I'm talking about infants, there is some concern, particularly if the mother is sleeping very heavily and there are beds which are not very stable, like a water beds or very soft beds, where the mother, if or particularly when the mother is using intoxications like alcohol and things like that, then there's a chance of accidental suffocation when the mother overlying it. But that's for infants only. But for children, I'm talking about age 2, 3, 4 and above, absolutely no information that we have until this point that it adversely affects child's development in any way.
Even if it's different sexes?
Absolutely no. For a
Okay.
child, parent is a parent.
Okay.
If it's a mother or major attachment figure, as we call it, it can be a mother, it can be a father, or even in a foster mother, foster care, any adult health provider, parental figure, that is very helpful. In most cases, it's usually a parent. And that actually gives a more better, and you know that most children tend to have night terrors and nightmares when they're sleeping at night. They get
Or
scared.
storms? Or
Yeah, storms having, or they may have seen a violent movie the earlier night and they're kind of scared of death. Most kids have, and this is a normal natural phenomenon to happen, that they kind of concerned that out of the closet a boogeyman will come out when the lights are turned off. Those kind of things are natural to happen, and that tends to disrupt a child's sleep. These kind of things can be avoided if a child has someone, a parental figure, to just put our hands around
The
and just
the
be more secure.
security and
It's
the
a security
safety
thing,
that-
right? And as a child, it's a natural phenomenon that as a child grows older and older, he will develop a sense of independence,
Separateness,
separation, and that's a normal figure to have it. But to force a child, I've seen parents making their child cry, kind of forcing a child to sleep in the bed and leave the child crying, and they separate themselves because they're concerned that if they don't do that, the child is grew up to be a sissy or something like that. I've heard a lot of different stories about parents actually forcing their children to sleep
And so
separately.
this is interesting to you because you come from a culture that
Right.
this is really an encouragement.
Right. It used to be think that, we used to think that it's probably a necessity in certain cultures where don't have as much space available. But as we found that even in very affluent cultures like the Japanese culture, for example, there were a number of studies from Japan where actually it is encouraged to have bed sharing or bed sleeping with child.
So in other words, we Americans have made ourselves uptight over something that doesn't really need to be
Well, there are a lot of good things about the American culture. That's why I would like to say the best in the world. But this is one of the things that we're probably misinformed now about the bed sharing and things like that.
We're going to have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back and continue this conversation. I told you it was going to be a great day. We'll see you in just a minute.
Stay tuned. West Texas View will be right back.